They say a mother's love knows no bounds, but I never imagined my daughter would use it against me. But before you tell me, subscribe to our newsletter so you don't miss any of the incredible stories we share here. My name is Victoria Hayes, and at 42, I thought I understood the sacrifices motherhood required. I was sorely mistaken. Emma had been at Northwestern University for 4 years, studying psychology with a minor in business, a combination that made me proud and worried in equal measure. She'd always been a good reader of people, adept at finding their weaknesses. Our relationship had changed since she left for college, becoming something that felt more like a business transaction than a mother-daughter bond. Every month, I transferred $2,000 toward her expenses, paid her $35,000 tuition, and sent her care packages filled with her favorite things from home. The distance between Chicago and Evanston was only an hour, but it might as well have been an ocean. Emma rarely came home anymore, always citing studies, work, or social obligations that kept her busy. Our conversations had become brief, superficial check-ins where she updated me on grades and I updated her bank account. I told myself this was normal. Young adults needed space to grow, to become independent. But late at night, when I sat in my empty house surrounded by her childhood photos, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was losing her completely. The enthusiastic little girl who used to climb into my bed every morning had been replaced by a polite stranger who thanked me for my financial support, but never asked about my life. Last month, everything changed when Emma called with news that made my heart soar and sink simultaneously. "Mom, I have something incredible to tell you," she said, her voice carrying an excitement I hadn't heard in years. "I'm engaged." The words hit me like a thunderbolt. My baby girl was getting married, and I hadn't even known she was seriously dating anyone. When I pressed for details about this mysterious fiancé, Emma became evasive in a way that reminded me uncomfortably of her teenage years. "His name is Michael," she said, which felt like a lie even through the phone. "He's amazing, Mom. He treats me like a princess and makes me feel like I can conquer the world." The engagement announcement came with financial expectations that took my breath away. Emma wanted me to contribute $50,000 toward their dream wedding, plus help them purchase a starter home in Evanston so they could build equity instead of throwing money away on rent. The house was a charming Victorian cottage listed at $140,000, a stretch for my budget, but not impossible after years of careful saving and smart investments. Emma's happiness had always been my priority, and hearing the joy in her voice when she talked about her future made every penny feel worthwhile. Without hesitation, I agreed to everything she asked for. But something about the entire situation felt off in ways I couldn't articulate. Emma had always been open with me about her dating life, calling to analyze every text message and relationship milestone. This sudden engagement to a man she'd never mentioned felt completely out of character. When I asked to meet him, she always had excuses. He was traveling for work. He was shy around parents. He wanted everything to be perfect when we met. The more she deflected, the more curious I became about the man who had captured my daughter's heart so completely that she was willing to marry him without her mother's blessing. The house closing was scheduled for the following Friday, and Emma planned to move in immediately with her mysterious fiancé. Thursday evening, as I reviewed the financial documents one final time, inspiration struck. Why not surprise them this weekend? I could drive up to Evanston with a trunk full of housewarming gifts, help Emma settle into her new home, and finally meet the man who would soon be my son-in-law. The idea filled me with nervous excitement. Perhaps this surprise visit would help us reconnect, bridge the distance that had grown between us over the past 4 years. That night, I barely slept as I planned the perfect surprise. I would arrive Saturday morning with fresh flowers, Emma's favorite coffee from the local roastery, and my checkbook ready for a furniture shopping spree. Maybe this mysterious fiancé was just nervous about meeting his future mother-in-law, worried that he wouldn't be good enough for my successful, beautiful daughter. I pictured a sweet young man, perhaps a fellow student or a young professional, grateful for my generosity and eager to welcome me into their new life together. In my wildest nightmares, I never could have imagined the horror waiting behind that front door. Saturday morning dawned crisp and clear, one of those perfect autumn days in Chicago when the air smells like possibility and change. I loaded my car with everything I thought Emma might need for her new home: gorgeous fall mums from the farmer's market, gourmet coffee beans, and bags filled with kitchen essentials and decorating supplies. The drive to Evanston felt like a pilgrimage to my daughter's future, and I found myself singing along to old songs that reminded me of her childhood. For the first time in months, I felt like I was doing something right as a mother, finally taking action to rebuild the bridge between us. The Victorian cottage was even more beautiful than the listing photos had shown. White trim against sage green siding, a wraparound porch with original gingerbread details, and mature oak trees that created a canopy of golden leaves. This was exactly the kind of home I had dreamed of providing for Emma, a place where she could build the life I had always wanted for her. I parked on the street and gathered my gifts, practically bouncing with anticipation. The front door was painted a cheerful yellow, and I could see warm light glowing through the lace curtains. My daughter was home, probably unpacking boxes and making nesting plans with her new love. I knocked on the door with my free hand, calling out cheerfully, "Emma, it's Mom. I brought coffee and supplies for your new house." The footsteps approaching from inside sounded heavier than Emma's light step, but I assumed it was her fiancé coming to greet me. This would be our first meeting, and I wanted to make a good impression. My heart was racing with nervous excitement as I heard the deadbolt turn. The door swung open, and my entire world shattered like glass hitting concrete. Standing there in worn jeans and a wrinkled t-shirt, looking exactly the same as he had 5 years ago, was Marcus Reed. Time stopped. The coffee cup slipped from my hands and exploded on the porch, hot liquid splashing across both our feet, but neither of us moved. Marcus, the man who had lived in my house for 2 years, eaten my food, spent my money, and contributed absolutely nothing except heartache and manipulation. The same lazy, charming sociopath I had finally gotten the courage to throw out when Emma was 17. His dark eyes held that familiar mixture of arrogance and amusement, like he was enjoying a private joke at my expense. "Ah, well," he said slowly, leaning against the doorframe like he owned the place. "Victoria Hayes, you're looking older." Behind him, I heard Emma's voice calling, "Who is it, babe?" And the word babe hit me like a physical blow. My daughter, my precious baby girl, was calling this parasite babe. The man who had made my life miserable for 2 years, who had stolen money from my purse and brought other women to my house, was now living in the home I had purchased for my daughter. Emma appeared in the doorway wearing one of his oversized shirts, her hair mussed from sleep, looking so young and vulnerable that my heart broke all over again. When she saw me standing there covered in coffee, her face cycled through surprise, guilt, and finally defiance. "Mom," she said. But there was no real shock in her voice. There was something else, something that made my stomach drop to my feet. She had known I would figure it out eventually. This wasn't a coincidence or a cosmic joke. My daughter had deliberately chosen to be with my ex-boyfriend, and she had been planning this moment, preparing for my inevitable discovery. The realization hit me like a tsunami. Emma hadn't just fallen for Marcus by accident. She had sought him out. She had chosen him. She had brought him back into our lives with full knowledge of what he had done to me. "Do you know who this is, Emma?" I whispered. Though we all knew the answer, Marcus chuckled and put his arm around Emma's shoulders possessively, pulling her close against his side. "Of course she knows, Vic. We've been together for 10 months now. Funny how life works out, isn't it?" Emma lifted her chin with a defiance that reminded me painfully of herself at 17E, when she used to defend Marcus during our fights. "Yes, Mom," she said quietly. "I know exactly who Marcus is, and I chose him anyway." The words cut through me like broken glass, each syllable designed to inflict maximum damage. Standing on that porch, looking at the 2 people who had just destroyed my faith in family, love, and human decency, I realized that some betrayals are so complete they rewrite your entire understanding of reality. This wasn't just about Emma making a poor choice in men. This was about my daughter deliberately choosing to hurt me in the most devastating way possible, using my own history against me like a weapon. As I stood there shaking and coffee-stained, watching Marcus stroke Emma's hair with the same hands that used to touch me, I understood that the woman who had driven to Evanston that morning was gone forever. "I think we should go inside and talk about this," I managed to say, though my voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. Marcus stepped back with exaggerated politeness, gesturing for me to enter the home I was purchasing for them. The space was beautiful: hardwood floors, original crown molding, a fireplace that belonged in a magazine. But seeing Marcus's belongings scattered throughout my investment made me physically ill. His guitar leaning against the mantel, his motorcycle jacket thrown over my carefully chosen furniture, his work boots kicked carelessly by the door. It was like stepping into a nightmare version of my past. Emma sat on the sofa with her legs tucked under her, a defensive posture I remembered from her teenage years when she was preparing for battle. Marcus remained standing, arms crossed, like a bodyguard protecting her from me. The irony was so bitter I could taste it. "Emma," I began carefully, "I need you to help me understand how this happened. When did you two reconnect?" She looked up at Marcus before answering, seeking his approval like a child asking permission to speak. That simple gesture broke something inside me that I wasn't sure could ever be repaired. "We ran into each other at a coffee shop near campus last January," Emma said, her voice barely above a whisper. "He was working nearby, and we started talking. He told me how sorry he was about everything that happened between you two." I felt my temperature rising despite my efforts to stay calm. What exactly did he tell you he was sorry about, Emma?" Marcus jumped in smoothly, his voice carrying that same manipulative tone I remembered all too well. "I told her the truth, Victoria. That I was immature back then, that I handled our relationship poorly, that I've grown up since then." "Grown up?" I repeated, unable to keep the bitterness out of my voice. "Emma, this man lived in our house for 2 years without contributing a single dollar to household expenses. He stole money from my purse. He brought other women home while you were at school. He promised to find work every day and spent every night drinking with his friends. What exactly has he told you about his growth?" Emma's face flushed red, but not with embarrassment, with anger directed entirely at me. "That was 5 years ago, Mom. People change. Marcus has his own business now, and he treats me like I'm precious." "What business?" I asked, though I already knew this was another lie in a long line of Marcus's fabrications. He had always been full of vague promises about entrepreneurial ventures that never materialized. Emma hesitated, and Marcus put his hand on her shoulder in what was clearly a warning gesture. "I'm developing a line of wellness products," he said confidently. "The market for natural supplements is exploding, and I'm getting in on the ground floor. Emma believes in my vision." It was the exact same type of bullshit he used to feed me about his music career and his various get-rich-quick schemes. "And how are you funding this business venture, Marcus?" I asked, my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. Emma's face crumpled slightly, the first crack in her defiant facade. "Emma," I said slowly, "please tell me you're not supporting him with the money I send you." The question hung in the air like smoke, and I watched my daughter's last shred of innocence disappear as she realized I had connected the dots. Marcus tightened his grip on her shoulder, reminding her whose side she was supposed to be on. "Mom, you wouldn't understand," Emma finally said, but the conviction had gone out of her voice. "Marcus is building something real, something important. Sometimes I help him financially because that's what partners do. That's what love looks like." The words were clearly Marcus's, fed to her and regurgitated back to me like gospel truth. I thought about all the sacrifices I had made, all the extra hours I had worked, all the dreams I had deferred to give Emma every opportunity in life. And she was feeding it all to the same man who had already proven he would take everything and give nothing back. Sitting in that beautiful living room, watching my daughter defend the man who was using her exactly the way he had used me, I realized that some lessons can only be learned through pain. Emma had chosen Marcus with full knowledge of our history, which meant she had chosen to reject everything I had tried to teach her about self-respect, boundaries, and recognizing manipulation. She wanted to be an adult making adult decisions. It was time for her to learn what that really meant. What happened next will haunt me for the rest of my life, not because of its cruelty, but because of how clearly it revealed the stranger my daughter had become. Emma stood up from the sofa, her entire demeanor shifting from defensive to aggressive, and looked me directly in the eye. "You know what, Mom? Maybe the problem wasn't Marcus. Maybe the problem was you." Her voice was quiet, almost conversational, which somehow made the words cut deeper than shouting would have. "Maybe you just gave up too easily. Maybe that's why Dad left too. You don't know how to fight for the people you love." The attack was so unexpected and so precisely aimed at my deepest insecurities that I actually stepped backward. This wasn't the daughter I had raised, the sweet girl who used to comfort me during my divorce, who had helped me paint over the holes Marcus had punched in our walls. This was someone else entirely, someone who had been coached in exactly where to strike for maximum damage. Marcus watched from behind her with that familiar smug expression, and I realized he had been preparing for this moment, training Emma to weaponize my vulnerabilities against me. "Emma, please," I whispered, tears threatening to spill over. "This isn't you talking. You know what Marcus put us through. You were there for the fights, the lies, the nights I cried myself to sleep after finding evidence of his cheating." But Emma just shook her head with a coldness that made my blood freeze. "I was 17, Mom. I didn't understand relationship dynamics then. Now I'm an adult, and I can see that Marcus was just struggling with feeling unappreciated and misunderstood. You never tried to meet him where he was." The gaslighting was so complete, so perfectly executed, that for a moment I questioned my own memories. Had I been too harsh? Had I not tried hard enough? Then I remembered finding Marcus passed out on our couch with cocaine residue on the coffee table. Emma safely away at a sleepover. I remembered the credit card bills for restaurants I'd never been to, the mysterious phone calls he would take in the garage, the way he would disappear for days and return with elaborate stories about helping friends. "Emma," I said firmly, "I need you to listen to me very carefully. This man is dangerous. He's a master manipulator, and he's using you exactly the way he used me." "No, Mom," Emma said, stepping closer with her voice dropping to a cruel whisper. "He's not using me. He loves me for who I am, not for what I can provide. That's something you never learned how to do. Love someone without trying to control them with money." Marcus put both arms around her from behind, and she leaned back against him like he was her protector. The intimate gesture, so reminiscent of our own relationship years ago, made me feel physically sick. "Victoria," Marcus said softly, "I think you should leave now. Emma doesn't need this kind of toxic negativity in her life." The audacity of this man, telling me to leave the house I was buying, protecting my daughter from me while living off my money, was so outrageous that I felt like I was losing my grip on reality. But what destroyed me completely was watching Emma nod in agreement. She wanted me gone. My daughter, whom I had loved and supported and sacrificed for, was choosing my abuser over me. "Get out," Emma said, her voice completely devoid of emotion. "Get out, and don't come back until you're ready to accept my choices and treat my fiancé with respect." She walked to the door and held it open, waiting for me to leave. Marcus followed, keeping his hands on her waist in a gesture that was clearly meant to provoke me. The same man who used to touch me like that was now touching my daughter, and she was not only allowing it but encouraging it. I walked toward the door on unsteady legs, feeling like I was moving through quicksand. At the threshold, I turned back one last time, hoping to see some flicker of the little girl I had raised, some sign that this wasn't really who she had become. But Emma's face was set in stone, her eyes as cold as winter. "Don't contact me until you're ready to apologize," she said. "Bow, and don't even think about trying to sabotage my relationship out of jealousy and bitterness." As I heard the door slam behind me with a finality that echoed through my bones, I realized that in the span of an hour, I had lost my daughter, my faith in family, and my belief that love always wins in the end. Standing on the sidewalk in front of the house I had bought for them, I understood that Emma hadn't just chosen Marcus, she had chosen to destroy me. And now it was time to show her what that choice would cost. The drive home was 37 minutes of tears, rage, and planning. By the time I pulled into my garage, my shock had crystallized into something much more dangerous: absolute clarity. Emma wanted to be treated like an adult. She wanted to make her own choices without her mother's interference. Perfect. Adults support themselves, handle their own consequences, and live with their own mistakes. I sat in my car for a long moment, looking at my beautiful house that I had worked so hard for, and made a series of decisions that would change all of our lives forever. Monday morning arrived gray and cold, matching my mood perfectly. I walked into my office with a purpose that made my assistant do a double take. "You look different," Janet said as I passed her desk. "Still more focused." She had no idea. My first call was to my personal banker, a woman I'd worked with for 8 years. "Margaret, I need to freeze the joint account I share with my daughter, effective immediately." There was a pause on the other end. "Victoria, that account has over $12,000 in it. Are you absolutely certain?" I had never been more certain of anything in my life. My second call was to my attorney, a sharp woman who had handled my divorce and understood complicated family dynamics. "Patricia, I need to update my will today. I want to remove my daughter as beneficiary and establish a scholarship fund instead." The silence stretched long enough that I wondered if we'd been disconnected. "Victoria, this is a major decision. Family conflicts can often be resolved with time and communication. But time was a luxury I could no longer afford, and communication required 2 willing participants. The third call was the most satisfying. The realtor handling the house purchase sounded thrilled to hear from me. "Victoria, I'm so excited about the closing this Friday. Your daughter must be over the moon about her new home." The irony was delicious. "Actually, Karen, I need to withdraw my offer immediately. I'm backing out of the purchase, effective today." The silence was deafening. "But Victoria, the contracts are signed. There will be significant financial penalties." I smiled for the first time in days. "Send me the paperwork. I'll gladly pay whatever it costs." By Wednesday, the consequences were cascading exactly as I had planned. Emma called me 19 times that day, but I let every call go to voicemail. Her messages told the story of her awakening. Confusion. "Mom, my card isn't working." Anger. "How could you freeze my account without warning?" Panic. "The house deal fell through and we don't understand why." And finally, desperation. "Mom, please, I need to talk to you. Marcus is really upset and we don't know what to do." Each message revealed another crack in her newfangled adult confidence. Thursday evening brought a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Victoria, this is Marcus." His voice had lost all its cockiness, replaced by barely controlled panic. "Look, I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but Emma is falling apart. She needs her mother right now." The nerve of this man, calling me to fix the mess he had helped create, was almost admirable in its shamelessness. "Marcus," I said calmly, "Emma made it very clear that she doesn't need me in her life. I'm simply respecting her wishes as an adult." She's 22 years old, Victoria, he said, his voice rising. She can't support both of us on her part-time campus job. The admission hung in the air between us like a confession. Both of you, I repeated slowly, savoring each word. You mean she can't support you, Marcus? Just like I couldn't support you 5 years ago. Just like whoever comes after her won't be able to support you either. The line went quiet, except for his heavy breathing. You're destroying your own daughter to get back at me, he said finally. That's sick. I laughed, actually laughed. No, Marcus. I'm teaching my daughter that actions have consequences. It's a lesson you never learned. 6 months later, I heard through mutual friends that Emma had dropped out of school and moved back to Ohio with her father. Marcus had disappeared within weeks of losing access to my financial support, leaving Emma heartbroken and alone in a studio apartment she could barely afford. She tried to contact me several times over the following year, but I never responded. Some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt. At 43, I've learned that generosity without boundaries is just another word for being used. That sometimes the people who hurt us most are the ones we love most, and that protecting your peace is worth more than protecting someone else's feelings. Emma wanted to be an adult. I simply gave her the opportunity to learn what that really costs. So, what did you think of this revenge? Would you do the same thing in Victoria's place? Let us know in the comments. We read them all and would love to hear your thoughts. If you've made it this far, subscribe to the channel because you clearly have great taste for incredible stories like this. And look, there's another incredible video coming up that I'm sure you'll love. Click it now and let's continue this story marathon together. See you later.